Hi guys, my name is Mike, and today we're going to be going over necessary and sufficient conditions. First, I'll just give a quick run-through of what they are, how to think of them, and then we'll do some problems to make sure we have a good understanding of them. So first, let's figure out what is a sufficient condition. Okay, what makes something a sufficient condition for something else? For the sake of variables, let's say what makes A a sufficient condition for B. Well, A is a sufficient condition for B when A is true, B has to be true. That means A is sufficient for B. So to bring a real-world example into this, something from our problems later, let's think of a cat and a mammal. So if we have A and that's a cat, if that is true, if it is a cat, that means it is a mammal. Let's say mammal. A cat is sufficient for being a mammal. When one is true, the other is true. Another way to visualize this is like that. That being cat, that being mammal. So all cats are mammals. When this is a cat, it's always going to be true. However, there's cats that aren't, there's mammals that aren't cats. There's more things in B than are in A. And this is going to be really important when we're thinking of necessary conditions. Another way to write this is if A, then B. So if cat, then mammal. Perfect. So this is the best way to write it for our means, because you'll recognize this symbol from your previous material. Okay, so next we're going to go over necessary. And I really like necessary and sufficient conditions because there's a real unity to them. So what a necessary condition, when A is necessary for B, that means when A is false, B is false. How do we visually represent this? You reverse it. When A is necessary for B, all things B fit inside of A. So if something isn't A, if A is false, it isn't B, because all B is A. So let's say cats and mammals, but now we'll say A is mammals and B is cats. So a mammal is a necessary condition for being a cat. All cats are mammals. When it isn't a mammal, when A is false, it isn't a cat. Or another way to say that is there's no cats that aren't mammals. So A is necessary for B. Another way to write this is if B, then A. And you'll notice this is the inverse of sufficient conditions. A, then B. If A, then B. If B, then A. A outside of B, necessary. A inside of B, sufficient. So it can be easy to get confused, obviously, because they're just the reverse of each other. But let's go over some examples, and that'll make more sense. But first, obviously, if something is both necessary and sufficient for something else, then it's a perfect condition for it. That would mean that all A is B. They are one and the same. They're the same exact circle, overlaid the same exact circle. Okay, great. Now let's bring our problems. Okay, so the first one So we're trying to figure out whether one is sufficient, necessary, or both for 2. So not the other way around. So first, from our demonstration, Jack is a cat, Jack is a mammal. Obviously, Jack is a cat is sufficient for being a mammal, so we can just get that one out of the way. But now we'll try to think about how we actually do this. So B, Chris is married, Chris has a spouse. So you just want to test them. You want to see if this being true makes that true, because that would be sufficient. If that being false makes that false, because that would be necessary. Neither of those are true, it's neither. If both of those are true, then one would be a necessary and sufficient condition for 2. So Chris is married, Chris has a spouse. If Chris is married, if that's true, then Chris does have a spouse. Check. Sufficient. If Chris isn't married, then he doesn't have a spouse. Check. Necessary. So Chris being married is a necessary and sufficient condition for Chris having a spouse. They're one and the same thing. Okay, cool. Let's go on to C. Joe is married, Joe has a wife. So Joe is married, true, Joe has a wife. Not necessarily, because Joe could have a husband, for example. So just because Joe is married doesn't necessarily mean he has a wife. Just because that's true doesn't mean that's true. So it's not sufficient. Joe is married, Joe has a wife. So if Joe is married is false, so Joe isn't married, then he definitely doesn't have a wife. That's definitely false. So it is necessary. Joe is married is necessary for Joe having a wife. Okay, let's do D. Al has income. Al pays income taxes. Okay, so if Al has income is true, is Al paying income taxes true? Well, not in our world. No, he could be avoiding taxes. So no, that's not true, and that's not necessarily true. It wouldn't be a sufficient condition. Okay, Al has income is false. Al doesn't have income. Al doesn't pay income taxes. Yeah, if Al doesn't have income, he definitely won't pay income taxes. So 1 being false makes 2 false. So that is necessary. Al having income is necessary for Al paying income taxes. Okay, let's say Peter has a car, Peter buys gasoline. So if Peter has a car is true, is Peter's buying gasoline have to be true? Well, no. I mean, you'd think it would be true. Most likely it would be true, but not in all cases. He could, his friend could be buying him gasoline, for example. He could have an electric car. He could have a Tesla. That's not specified, so it's not necessarily true. What about if Peter doesn't have a car, Peter doesn't buy gasoline? Well, no, he could still buy gasoline for another reason. So this being false doesn't mean that this is false. So this is neither. It's not sufficient or necessary. What about George is a U.S. president, George is a U.S. citizen? Well, if George is a U.S. president is true, then George is a U.S. citizen is true, because you have to be a citizen if you're a president. So it's sufficient. If George is a president is false, however, George is a citizen isn't necessarily false. There's a lot of U.S. citizens who aren't the president. So therefore, this is just a sufficient condition. Being a president, a U.S. president, is a sufficient condition for being a U.S. citizen. Perfect. Okay, let's go on to it is cloudy, it will rain. Sorry, I'm parched. Let me just get a sip. Got some coffee with me. Okay, it is cloudy, it will rain. If it is cloudy, if that's true, does it will rain have to be true? No, it could be cloudy and it won't rain. So it's not sufficient. It is cloudy. False. It's not cloudy. Then it definitely won't rain. Well, this one's a bit complicated because there are sun showers. So I guess there's some examples where there are no clouds and it still rains. But I've heard that's just because you can't see the clouds. So that's semantics. If you say it can rain without clouds, then obviously it's not a necessary condition. But if you say there has to be clouds to rain, then it is a necessary condition. I'm just going to call it necessary, but that's just down to semantics. Okay, let's move on to a clearer one. Tom has an MFA, a Master's of Fine Arts. Tom is a great artist. Okay, so if Tom has an MFA, if that's true, is Tom necessarily a great artist? No. He could still be a bad artist despite being graduated from a school. He did a good job getting his master's of arts, but, doesn't mean he's a great artist. Not sufficient. How about he doesn't have an MFA, he isn't a great artist? Well, no, because there's tons of great artists who don't have MFAs, so this being false does not make this false, so neither. Okay, John loves Mary, someone loves Mary. So if John loves Mary is true, someone loves Mary is true, because John is someone. So if he loves Mary, yeah, that has to be true. Someone definitely loves Mary. Bam, that's sufficient. So if he doesn't love Mary, no one loves Mary. Well, that doesn't track. There could be tons of other people who still love Mary. So it's not a necessary condition. It is solely a sufficient condition. Okay, cool. Let's go to the last one. Amy is not a student. Amy is neither a student nor a teacher. This is what it says here. It's out of camera, but teacher. Amy is neither a student nor a teacher. Okay, well, this one's a bit complicated because of the negation, so let's work through it. Amy is not a student. So let's say that's true. She isn't a student. Then Amy isn't a student or a teacher. She's neither. Well, if she's not a student, if that's true, she could still be a teacher. So this isn't necessarily true. So it's not sufficient. Okay. Let's say this is false. So if this is false, Amy isn't a student is false. That means Amy is a student, is what that would mean. So if that's false, is this false? That means that Amy is either a student or a teacher. Well, she is a student, so she is actually one of those. So, yeah, so that is necessary. Perfect. So Amy not being a student is a necessary condition for her not being a student nor a teacher. You just have to negate the negations. Obviously, 2 no's cancel out to a yes, so it gets a bit confusing. It's all about how you word it. Okay, guys, that's my lesson for today. Sorry if I rushed through anything. Hopefully that all made sense. Really, it's quite a nice concept, and I hope this helps you understand it. Thank you for watching my teaching lesson, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.